This is the Picard podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're back with the Star Trek Picard Season 1 finale at In Arcardia Ego Part 2. Welcome back, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. This is TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about the final episode of Star Trek Picard Season 1 at an Arcadia Ego Part 2. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Jolan True, fellow Trekkers and Trekkies. I am one of your other hosts, John.
And rounding out this trio of Trekkers and Trekkies and Trekkites, and I'm pretty sure a few other things, it is I, Chris. I am back for the finale, because no one asked for it. And none of you wanted it, but what the hell? I'm here.
We wanted it. We're delighted to have you back, Chris. What we've been doing in some of the time that we haven't been talking about Picard, we've been recording podcasts on Penny Dreadful, which have been going on 3 or 4 hours. So it feels like it's been probably about 12 or 14 hours of podcasting that we haven't recorded with you, Chris. And that's just in the last week.
I know.
Exactly. It's been a whole 7 days, and I'm like, it's been so long. I miss my guys.
Absolutely. I know. Welcome back. And a big well wish to everybody out there listening. Hope you're all taking care of yourselves at the moment. We know it's really, really tough time, and we hope that our podcasts provide a little bit of entertainment to relieve a little bit of the boredom that comes with being indoors so much. We totally understand how difficult it must be for everybody, because everybody's going through it, right?
Yeah, it's a worldwide thing. And if you are not doing it, we highly recommend that you do it. Now. Just go. But it does allow some time to binge, to listen to additional podcasts. So if you haven't checked out The Defenders or Daredevil Season 1, 2, or 3, or Jessica Jones Season 1 or 2, or any of our previous shows, why not jump back? It's perfect time to binge and listen, and just enjoy the back catalogue of our show. But at the same time, we also have stuff coming up in the future, like Penny Dreadful.
Yes, we do. And speaking of binging, if you want to get prepared for Penny Dreadful City of Angels that's coming out on the 26th of April, it's a perfect time to go back and watch the first 3 seasons of Penny Dreadful. Myself, John, and our extra co-host, we'll call him, Ray, from Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast, have been going back through the last 3 seasons. I have a podcast coming out, I think it's probably going to be out Monday next week, where myself and John and Ray talked about the first 4 episodes. It's almost 3 hours long, that one podcast. So that'll be coming out next week. You can get access to that if you go over to our Patreon at patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. All the episodes are posted there already, so you can get access to them there, but you'll get the first 4 on the main feed from next week. Highly recommend going back and checking out Penny Dreadful. I know some people missed out on it the first time it was out a couple of years ago, but it's such a good series.
Yes, it really is. You can't beat Victorian horror. Mm-hmm. And what else are you going to be doing now? Just thinking about all the Christmas babies have been made already. Mm-hmm. So at this point, we're just like, all right, now you got to listen to our podcast.
There you go.
Just binge on Netflix and every other show.
Exactly.
Well, apparently there is a shortage of condoms now going around globally. Yeah.
Wow.
Really? I did not hear that.
I just read that recently.
Of the human race for being protective.
Absolutely.
I suppose people could be using them as another form of glove, maybe, or something like that. But
or maybe the makers were diverted into making gloves.
Maybe,
possibly.
Or it's one for every finger.
Yes, there you go. Pack of 10. Perfect.
Or a handy place to put your Cadbury's finger or Kit Kat.
But speaking of a Cadbury's finger, I'm quite hungry, but I could really do with a pub sandwich and a packet of crisps and a pint. So I think it's about time we go over to 10 Forward.
Yes, fellow Trekkers and Trekkies, pull up your bar stool to the 10 Forward pub quiz. Get a bottle of your synthahol, which doesn't seem to be too great, but I think a dash of lime cordial may just sweeten it up a little.
It's certainly green enough.
It's certainly green enough indeed. But yes, I don't think Rios and 7 of 9 were fans of the synth hull at all. But nonetheless, let's persist with it. What's good for the geese is good for the gander. So we will have that. We're doing the 10 Forward pub quiz up front here just so that there is extra time for fellow Trekkies and Trekkers to come in with your answer to this episode's question. So here we go. Here is the 10th and final pub quiz question for Star Trek Picard. What does Dr. Jerati call the device that Rios used to fix La Serena and Picard used to pull off the updated Picard Maneuver? Just to repeat that, what does Dr. Jerati call the device that Rios used to fix La Serena and Picard used to pull off the updated Picard Maneuver?
Excellent. We are not going to accept magic wand or imaginary fictional item. There is a specific phrase that Jerati uses in the episode. That's what we're looking for our answer. As John mentioned, that's the 10th question in our pub quiz for the season. That means you can now send in all your answers to us for all the 10 Forward pub quiz questions. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, and the person who gets the most answers right wins our Star Trek Picard goodies, including a making of book, a badge from Starfleet, which we see on Commander Will Riker or Captain Will Riker in this episode. See that badge. So
Acting
get
Captain Will Riker.
That's right.
And of course, a pub quiz wouldn't be the same without one of the prizes being a huge beer steiner, so you can neck your favourite tipple.
Excellent.
And just before we maneuver on, then we will also put a list of all 10 pub quiz questions on the release of this podcast episode for everyone to provide their answers by Wednesday of next week. So that is the 1st of April. April Fools, everyone.
That's right. We promise you will be getting the goodies. I'll probably also put them up on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. We'd love to see you join us over there. And we will also obviously be doing a final episode for our Star Trek Picard podcast, which will be closing down all of the episodes of the show of the season, giving the answers to the pub quiz questions, and obviously awarding those Picard goodies to one of our fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. That'll be out next week. So get your answers in by Wednesday, and hopefully we'll have a good old battle as we did last time when we did our Watchmen quiz.
Exactly. Indeed, I'm thinking in this time of COVID, not cholera, we should possibly try and do a regular pub quiz event, possibly through Zoom or one of these other apps. I think it could be quite good to have that meetup of all the Picard, Watchmen, Defenders, and other fellows for a pub quiz, I reckon.
Excellent. Will you get working on that, John?
Yeah, I will do.
Yeah.
Okay, grant.
Done. John is just giving himself homework.
Yes, right.
I love that.
Stamp. Dum. Done.
Excellent. Let's get into this episode of Star Trek Picard, episode 10 of season 1. In Arcardia Ego Part 2. The teleplay for this episode was written by Michael Chabon, story by Michael Chabon and Akiva Goldsman, and directed once again by Akiva Goldsman. John, do you want to give us the official episode description for this one?
Sure. A final confrontation on the synthetics' homeworld, Coppelius pits Picard and his team against the Romulans, as well as the Synths, who seek to safeguard their existence at all costs.
A tiny description.
It is.
Considering how many deaths and how many reanimations we have in this episode and that kind of stuff. So,
it is, yes.
So they kind of avoided all the big points.
Yeah, it's certainly shied away from the spoilers.
Can I just pause for 1 second and give a bit of insight into kind of peel back the curtain slightly for our listeners? We use a doc because we're not always we're typically not always in the same room when we record. So we use a document just to kind of put and one thing we usually have there is the IMDb photos of the actual actors with their names, just so we can kind of refer back. So we never we messed it up a few times back in the previous times. So now we just want to make sure that we're always on point. And one I just noticed for the first time in the finale, Evan Ivagora, who plays Elnor, his IMDb photo is basically him topless in black and white. And I'm like, everyone else has a pretty much headshotty kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it just looks like, and it's just like, randomly it's just a nipple in his face.
Well, let's say you may have noticed that for the first time in episode 10, Chris, but I don't think myself and John noticed it for the first time this time.
There is a reason he is one of my favourite characters.
Well, good to know. Now I understand.
There you
I
go.
was just like looking at it, I was just scrolling and went, oh, that's a nipple. There you go.
Not
Anyway.
to say I've been stalking him, but I do believe that his IMDb picture has now updated. I think the one we have is an older version
Yes.
of it.
It may have been something that was taken before he was on the show, so it might be that. Anyway, boys, let's get into our big moments for the episode.
We must face the ramifications of the Prime Directive.
Chris, what's your Prime Directive, the big moment for the episode that you want to talk about?
So I just want to talk about 218 birds, 10 flowers, and 1 La Serena. This is the big point for me. This was the battle that happened. First of all, 10 orchids. Wow, these orchids not fully explained, which I was just a bit upset about. I was like, wait, are they like Soji? Are they like synthetic organics? Or are they just an alien life form that kind of native to that planet? Or are they actually technology? Never really explained, but okay.
Yeah, I think they did say something about them building more in episode 9.
Yeah.
But they build them fast. They got up to like 23 after 20 minutes of conversation in the last episode. And now we have a few more in this episode, I think, as the defense grid for the planet. But it is a weird defense grid, isn't it? The flowers coming out of space.
Flowers are going to wrap up you.
It's pretty. It's a pretty defense grid, but you would expect them to be a little more robust. Like the point I had down for this was flower power is no match for the warbirds.
Well, exactly.
Basically, they are rendered useless. So I thought they would be a bit more robust than that, given that, they do take down the Borg cube, which presumably was armed and ready to engage.
I think it was just shocked. I think they were just surprised when they arrived. So I presume the Romulans had been notified that these flowers are going to be coming at you. Don't wait for them. Shoot them down before they get near you. I did like La Serena using it as kind of their own shield as they were avoiding the Romulan ships coming in. I thought that was kind of cool. A little bit of protection for them, I suppose. They'd probably be ripped out of the sky pretty quickly if the flowers hadn't been.
Yeah, well, so originally they said they had 15. 5 were used in the previous episode, so they had 10. And they made the joke, is 10 enough to take down... Well, 10 could probably take down 109. What about the other 109? And I was like, that's okay, cool. So that's where I come in with the 10. Yeah. And they probably managed to pull more. One of the things about Star Trek that I've always enjoyed is it hasn't always had a reliance on star war, starship war, star battles. Yeah. This was still good. And the action was well centered. The CGI was well done. I thought they potentially might lean heavily into this and we were going to get a kind of like a Top Gun-esque, Maverick. Picard is taking over the ship and he is going to end up like destroying hundreds, like, cause he was a good pilot back in the day. And no, it was done. It was well done. It was a good use of everything. The pulling out, the Picard maneuver. All of it was just well done. And I think that's kind of, it subverted the expectation I had. I think that's probably the best way of putting it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it wouldn't have felt like Star Trek if we didn't have a conversation that resolved the major issue rather than it just being a massive battle. In Star Trek, they have, as you say, Chris, they have tended to avoid the massive battles, or the massive battles have been a starting point for a big storyline. Exactly. The probably the most well-known one is the Borg versus all of Starfleet at Wolf 359. That was an incident that happened where there was a massive battle, and then for the next 5 or 6 years, stories were generated off the back of that massive battle. So having the season of Picard end with a massive battle between the fleet of Romulans versus Starfleet, it just would have felt weird in this show if that's the way it ended, I suppose.
Yeah, I really, I enjoyed the battle. I think, dare I say it, this is how you do big space battles, with massive amounts of ships. Like, I much preferred the way this has been realized than all the Star Destroyers in The Rise of Skywalker. And they kind of just seem to, like the warbirds actually fire their guns. You know, there's actually a battle. I just felt this was really nicely realized. And I thought, you know, seeing Picard maneuvering La Serena through the orchids, although I still think they look like lilies, was really, really good. I thought it was nicely done, and seeing that moment as well, where then you get the Starfleet coming up against the Romulan fleet, was just really good. It felt epic. It felt that something could happen, even though it's primarily just a stand down of the Romulans. But you've had all this action beforehand, and I thought it was done really, really well. And I think, like you say, Chris, you know, these flowers have been a bit divisive, but you're right. Star Trek, because it looks at other planets and looks at different cultures and all that through the Federation and First Contact and meeting new species, and they all have their different quirks. And in this sense, the species of the synthetic is very much trying to emulate organic. So they've provided, that's how they've developed this system in a sense, of orchids. It allows for much more variety of imagination, shall we say.
Yeah, exactly.
If I had it recorded with you on the last episode, my fear was that this was an organic life from that planet. And I was like, are they just going to commit genocide? And we're going to just skip over that? Like, a whole thing just got destroyed. Like, an ecosystem. No, we find out that they're made. So the assumption is they're grown or built. But yeah, again, it's Star Trek. It's, as Derek said, the battle was used as a precursor. And we were given right up to the edge of an all-out battle. I think some people would have wanted that big battle between Starfleet and the Romulans, like all of these big ships versus the Romulan warbirds. But I think actually I'm happy with the way that this 280 warbirds versus 10 flowers and one little ship that could manage to de-escalate. Like, well, okay, there's obviously a lot more. We'll discuss these other points.
Absolutely.
But that was my big point. My big point was I thought I wanted a big, massive, epic space battle.
Right.
Because I always like big, epic battles. But no, this was actually this was nice.
Yes. I just couldn't imagine that at the end of this series. I kind of feel like if that's what was the expectation, that it was leading to a massive battle in the last episode. Even the synopsis for the episode, the official synopsis, sounds like you're going to get a big battle, but it feels like you wouldn't have watched the other 9 episodes of the show, because the whole 9 episodes of the show are quite contemplative, in general. And, you know, it's dealing with Picard and dealing with him as a character. So, if it was leading to a massive battle, it would feel weird, I think, at the end of the series.
That's it. And I think as well, seeing Picard and Dr. Jerati on La Serena, I like the way she turns to him and says, so what's the big plan? What are we doing? I thought it was really good, because it, you know, Picard had something in his mind, but it wasn't maybe fully formed, and he was trying to get to grips with piloting La Serena. But I like that idea that there was a make it up as you go along kind of thing. I thought that was really good. You know, he was going out there actually not to stop the warbirds, but to stop Soji, and in doing so stop the warbirds. So I thought that was kind of quite good.
Perfectly laid me up for my Prime Directive there, John. Thank you. My Prime moment from the episode, my big moment from the episode, is Soji's choice. I kind of like that.
Yeah,
it's
that was
similar
clever
to Sophie's choice there.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Look at you, smarty pants.
There, I'm sure that was the reason she was called Soji from the beginning. But I really like it, because again, it comes down to Jean-Luc Picard having this moment where he is believing in the abilities of others. He believes in other people to make the right decisions and make the right choices. That's what he's always lived his life by, and always lived his code by, really. So having this discussion with Jerati aboard La Serena, where he says to her, it's not their fault. They're just children. They've just been brought up the wrong way. They've been brought up and they've been taught by fear, and fear is not a good teacher. What is a good teacher is leading by example. And he sacrifices himself effectively. That this is his moment where he's saying to Soji, you have been told for the last couple of weeks now at this stage that in all of your investigations that you are the destroyer of worlds. You're the person that's going to bring down the Romulan Empire and the rest of the galaxy, because this is what their prophecy says. But this is your choice. This is your moment to realize if you stop doing what the prophecy said you were going to do, then you just become a normal person making choices. You have that moment of self-actualization, basically. So, I really love this moment, and I love that it ends with, Soji making that right decision effectively. It feels so Star Trek to me. That idea that you don't necessarily need to bring an army into a country, destroy everything that they own to take their power. You can work with them and join together and hopefully go to a better, brighter future. It just feels so much more Picard than any other resolution for the show. So I'm so glad it ended in this way.
Yeah, definitely. I think this whole thing around Soji's choice, throughout this episode, whether it was on their homeworld, as Picard is held in captivity, she's got this binary choice. You choose if we live, you choose if we die, meaning organics. And Picard, throws that back to her. Well, you choose. And to say that you have no choice is a failure of imagination.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have that element, and then you have again him reiterating that choice that is open to her to not turn on the beacon,
mm-hmm.
to trust in other people. And as you say, it is a great line. Fear is a poor teacher. And his learning by doing, or his example, is that he will give her his life. I just think as you say, it's really Star Trek.
Yeah.
And it was great just having this peppered throughout, because again, speaking of synths and maybe, with robots, or with cybernetics, it's this idea that they are told what to do through their coding
mm-hmm.
from humans, and then they have or reach consciousness that can be objectively defined and determined, and then to say effectively they're doing something because they're being controlled by you. And what Picard is saying is that you're no longer controlled by humans, so therefore make that choice.
Exactly.
It is a really nice way of bringing it back to the whole issue of, technology, and the risks, I suppose, that people may see with technology getting a consciousness.
And I love the description of it. Life is a responsibility, is what he's saying. You have to take that responsibility into your hands if you want to be a living creature, if you want to be real, as Soji asked him earlier on in the season, is she real? If you want to be real and you want to be a living being, you need to make choices and make the right choices. So that's the empowerment moment. So yeah, really, really enjoyed that. That's my big moment for the episode. John, what's yours? I can guess, but I'll ask you anyway.
Do you want to take the biggest point? Go on.
Yes, I do. Sorry, I'm just warming up. It is the death of Picard. But not only that, it's his death and his rebirth.
So the two biggest points from the episode.
Yeah, it is. I'm calling it his Golemification. That takes massive kahunas. I'm really impressed with them taking that option. I wasn't convinced that they would do it. I thought this golem was, going to be for, Dr. Soong or for someone else, or even Bruce Maddox. I think we discussed in the last episode.
We did, yeah.
We also discussed that it could be Picard as well. And I know some of the feedback said it's going to be for Jean-Luc, but I think hats off for taking that, for effectively, dare I say it, killing off through his precondition of the aromatic syndrome, killing off such an icon to rebirth him as a synthetic like Soji and Dahj. I just think that's really awesomely epic. Yeah. I think it's great. I think in terms of Picard's death, though, do you know, Patrick Stewart's performance is just phenomenal here. He is an old guy at this time, and my God, does he use those natural assets that he has to make that death seem believable. Like, he does feel frail. And this is a guy who exercises every day and is in pretty rude health.
Better condition than me.
You know, I love the close-ups of his face and just the wrinkles and the hands. It's almost like the synth who met him for the first time, who touched him to look at those lines of endurance and happiness and sadness. And it's just like, it's totally there on his face. And I just loved how Patrick Stewart portrayed his ailment of the aromatic syndrome on La Serena with Dr. Jerati. Like, it felt painful, and those close-ups. And then again, when he's beamed back down to Coppelius, to the synth homeworld, and he's there. And I thought, you know, his moments with Elnor and Raffi were just fantastic. And I think that then just accentuated the fact that, you know, their kind of final moments looking out across the sunset, with again that butterfly motif sort of going between all of these things, the simplicity of them crying and comforting one another was massive. I got really emotional. I must say, I was a blubbering wreck, really, what with Picard and Data and so on. It really got to me, and I thought it was so well done, and I thought the choices they made with the conversations with Rios and Seven of Nine, and then with Elnor and Raffi, were really nice. I loved the butterfly motif, and certainly when it came to Data and Picard's conversation or musing on death in that massive complex quantum simulation, I thought was just really nice and just so well done. So that, and then you have his rebirth as a synth. I'm really happy with that. I don't want him to go just yet. And I think it's a really interesting take for such an iconic character of Star Trek. And I think fair dues to them. I like the fact of what that potentially means for a season 2. You know, this idea of whether Starfleet will actually be told, as to, or whether they will know that he's a synth. Will he tell Will Riker and Deanna Troi or any of his other previous officers? You know, all of this. Yeah. So it really sets it up nicely. And of course, I think that's about it, really. I just think it's a massive play.
Yeah. It really is, yeah. It's amazing to have him die at the end of the season. Now, do you think it took away a little bit that we knew before the season aired that there was a season 2 already confirmed? Because I didn't expect him to remain permanently dead once he died on the show. I already knew going into the episode that we had a season 2, and it was called Star Trek Picard. It wasn't called Star Trek anything else. So the idea that we, at this stage especially, we hadn't set up anybody else with the surname Picard, which we thought coming into the series, it might be, you know, the children of Picard go on and they lead the second season or something. But at this stage, going out of the season at episode 10, I thought it was impossible for him to be permanently dead when this happened to him. So that's what I thought.
I just didn't think he was going to die.
So I actually thought La Serena was going to be destroyed and a replicated version of it was going to be created, and potentially that was going to become the Picard.
Oh, okay.
So that's how you continue. And I think that still could happen in season 2.
Okay.
Because Patrick Stewart he's not a young man. He may not want to continue. Like, they've confirmed season 2 and 3 of this.
They've confirmed season 2 and said that they were allowed to start working on writing an outline for season 3, I think. They brought on a new showrunner for season 2. Michael Chabon was only on for season 1 always. They have a new showrunner for season 2, and they were told, crack a story that could be worked into a season 3. I can't imagine that they would stop making these if it's continues to be successful. They were very clear, though, once they brought the synth Picard back, they were very clear about the rules of engagement here, right? Because I had this horrible image of suddenly we have immortal Picard, you know, and it does a time jump of 100 years, and Picard's there with brand new people, and it's still played by Patrick Stewart, and he's now 250 years old. Well, they're very clear. They've cured the medical condition that he has, the aromatic syndrome, that's gone, but they've given him roughly the same amount of years as he would have had if he didn't have aromatic syndrome, which is a nice little touch, because that could mean 5, that could mean 10. Picard does point out, I'd like another 10 years, maybe 20.
Yeah, I like that.
Nobody corrects him on it.
Yeah.
So he could be getting 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
But they give you a little line. They give you a little rule that, look, we just cured one thing. He is a synth. He's back alive, but he will eventually pass on.
Yeah.
But he can be hacked.
That's the first place you go.
That's the workaround. He's a synthetic now. He can be hacked. He can be upgraded.
I love it.
But is
they
it
can
that
create a new golem?
is it that simple?
Probably
with the hacking?
not, but like they could. So like, there's a way around it.
Yeah, no, what I mean is that because these are synths of almost a different order of magnitude, so it's not like Westworld where they'll slit their wrist and put in the USB cable. I think this, because of the way it's created, because, you know, previous episode, they were talking about the mind transfer and all this. That's not to say I agree. It could be possible, but I think it's probably a more complicated procedure because of how this form of synthetic is being created and how the mind transfer, and those, layers of mind transfer that they were talking about have to be done. So I know what you're saying. It's a risk, but I don't think it's simply like they knock him over the head or EMP him and then it's like a slit of the wrist and a USB cable. I think.
No, I think it's more that like they've written themselves out of a potential corner. That was the problem they were going to face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is they've de-aged to a degree Picard based on the actor himself so that he can be a bit more mobile than he actually was in the beginning of the show.
Mm-hmm.
They can, if they want to, upgrade him and all that type of thing. I don't see it happening. But also, I trust of the writer room I know so far, Mark Bernardin has gone in.
Yes.
As a writer in now season 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the other two writers, I can't remember their names, tip of my tongue, but there's a couple of writers in there who have done previous work. And they're good writers. I trust them. They're not going to go for the easy, how this week we'll upgrade, give Picard this power, and this, he's now super smart because he can hack. No, they won't do what they did with Soji, where suddenly she just knew things.
I can't imagine Picard being like Rick from Rick and Morty or something and suddenly having, you know, extra extendable arms and stuff. Again, they were very clear. You know, we had Dr. Sung saying to him, I'm not giving you any extra abilities because you've had 94 years in your body and you know how your body works. I'm not giving you any abilities that you wouldn't have had yesterday coming back alive as a synth, and you're going to die when you would have traditionally died if you didn't have aromatic syndrome. So really all they've done is cured the aromatic syndrome and put him into a synthetic body. That's the basics of what they have done. And I think we also have to agree that with Star Trek, there are rules that they got to abide by, and to suddenly have the ability to take off an arm and lash on a gun if they needed it in a certain situation is probably not something that this show would do.
He also does say that you haven't been augmented in any way. So, and I think the context, so he comes back, but the context of his conversation with Data previously about life and death, it's why he says, you've not made me immortal. But then there's the cheeky wink to, well, maybe an extra 5 or 10 years or 20 years, because there's the idea as well that they can listen in on that conversation, with Picard and Data, because Picard isn't part of this massive complex quantum simulation. He's real, as Data says.
Yeah.
So I think that context is why they've made that choice not to make him immortal. And because it would be going against his wishes. So I think that context maybe adds to that. But I still like the cheeky wink from Picard of an extra 10 or 20 years. You kidding me? You didn't do that.
Yeah.
You know, but, I think it's massive just because of the discussion we've had, just what it entails, what potential it has, I think is really, really good.
Do you think they've pissed off a fan base?
I think the particular group of fans, I'm using air quotes around them.
We're all using
They probably haven't watched any of the series. to be fair, these are the group that aren't willing to subscribe to Amazon Prime or to CBS All Access to watch these shows and are constantly online. You know, we cover many TV shows as people who listen to TV podcast industry. We've been doing it for years. And when you jump into a TV show that is based around Marvel, or a TV show based around DC, or a Star Wars movie, or a Star Trek show now these days, they seem to have this gaggle of people who are willing to jump on every single thing they read and not watch something and see whether they enjoy it or not, and still are willing to call themselves fans even though they don't watch it and like to complain about it. I don't know where that came from. It seems to have jumped out of somewhere years ago. Like in the past when we were kids, and Chris, you're probably exactly the same. When we were kids, you remember the Marvel versus DC fandom. You remember those people who just attacked each other saying, I like this type of book in comics and you like that type of book in comics, and they're completely different and we hate each other. Now there's people who say they are fans of the thing that other people are fans of and attack each other for not liking the specific part of the fandom that they like. So have they pissed off people that call themselves Star Trek fans? 100% they've pissed them off. But have they made a lot of fans of Picard and of the Next Generation? Have they made them happy? I think so. They've made me really happy, which is all I can really speak to. So I'm really happy about this decision. And it's a nice final moment. You get an emotional connection to the character in this moment. And we've heard throughout the series that synthetics are real to Picard. He spent most of his life aboard the Enterprise working with a synthetic who is his best friend, so he believes they're real, and he's now very similar and slightly more advanced as well. So it's a cool idea.
It is. I mean,
it's also a bold risk. And it's a bold. Do you remember Dodgeball? That's a bold choice, Cotton. I literally, when that happened, I went, "That's a bold choice." Mm-hmm. I'm with it.
Yeah, exactly.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's just a bold, like, you're killing off your main character and you're bringing him back. But you're killing them off. Mm-hmm. It's a bold choice.
Technically, they killed off two big characters and brought one of them back. But I think, look, at the end of the day, I suspect that elements of the Picard and Data conversation people would have had an issue with because it expressed love between two men, effectively, in that sense. So, I mean, look, at the end of the day, who cares if there are fans or people? You know, I think in terms of reviewing this, our thoughts are that it's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, gentlemen, just based on a bit of time here, let's move on to our medium moment for this episode.
Implement the Omega Directive immediately.
Excellent. Who wants to go first with their medium moment?
I am jumping in on this one because this is my annoyance with this finale.
Okay.
So, the synth gods, the Reapers, literally the Reapers from Mass Effect universe, the godlike synthetics that travel the universe through wormholes and are able basically come to the aid of other synthetics to destroy organic life wherever they find it. First of all, that's literally there for any of our fans from BioWare video games, the Mass Effect trilogy, that's a straight rip from there. But anyway, moving forward, the fact that they were putting these messages out for other synthetics to find, even though it was a religious, this part of it just didn't work. And I get the feeling, I'm hoping that this is going to be explored further in season 2, because essentially we got a big massive wormhole opened. We got some very weird looking like tentacle monsters coming out.
Yeah.
And then it closed and it was not discussed again for the remainder of the episode.
I liked one of our listeners, Jim Carey, over on our Facebook group, who said this was the MCU crossover as Dr. Octopus has just arrived in the Star Trek universe, because those look like the big spiky arms from Dr. Octopus from Spider-Man 2.
Or the basically the feet of the Reapers from Mass Effect 3.
Right.
And I was just like, oh my, I literally thought they were going to pull out those squid-like things from Mass Effect. I was going to go, are we just getting like, what's happening here?
Live action
just
power.
going to a crossover? So I'll take a step back and say the idea of synthetic gods above Borgs, above all other forms of androids and stuff that they are there and they help others kind of continue and help them rise up. Then making them, so I liked that, and that the story that is passed along is for them, it wasn't for organics, it wasn't a warning, it was an invitation.
Right.
I didn't like the evil synthetic gods aspect. I would have thought more benevolent, because this is essentially saying they are a Borg 2.0, 3.0.
See, I don't even know. That's such a small amount of time that they're on screen, because it is literally the tentacles that come out through the hole. And I'm kind of going, could they have done anything else other than destroy the galaxy, these synths? Because, like, they're massively sharp, pointy tentacles. That's all they are, is what we see here. Could they have possibly sent out a message to every other synth going, we'll help you and we'll nurture you and we'll bring you along with us and we'll create a wonderful community? When they look like that, when they have big pointy sharp tentacles with razor edges on the end of them, they're destroyers of worlds. They are the destroyers of worlds, basically.
Yeah.
But that could be just their ship. That could be just, well, like, like, these other synthetics built orchids. This could be their orchids.
Maybe.
We don't know, because it's closed and not talked about anymore.
Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? Because the way I kind of interpreted firstly, I suppose, yeah, it's a shame that it was just like a few little tentacles that kind of came down, and then when the beacon went off, it was like they went, ooh, yoink, and pulled back in.
Like, ooh, my feet,
yeah,
my feet.
rather than maybe one or two of them remaining in the world that had gotten through, and maybe it took, most of the Starfleet ships and the Warbirds just to destroy them, just to kind of give an indication of the power. Because, but then as well, I was kind of like trying to think to Narek's campfire stories with the Gamanodon, and that story of the end, the Judgment Day, the sort of Romulan version of Ragnarok. And, he was saying how Sheb Cheneb releases or unleashes hell, and they are the Chahalalalagul. And he talked about tentacles, I thought. So
you sure Chalalalagul?
Yeah, something like that.
No. Oh my god, we have to do that song at some point.
I'm thinking of Grease Lightning. I'm like,
exactly.
Bam, 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 I'm sure it's Chahalalalagul or something like that. And I like the fact that this prophecy, he says it's history, but I'm sure that what we were seeing here coming out of the wormhole were the Chahalahalagul.
Yes, yeah, I think so. That's what the story, I suppose, in Romulan culture, that's what it's become, and that's where the names they've attached to all of those characters, I suppose, involved in this story. But he says it's history, and he says the one terrible thing about history is that it keeps repeating itself. So has this happened before, effectively? When it happened before, what happened, is going, maybe the thing that they will go and investigate in season 2 of Picard.
Yeah.
Maybe they will find these creatures, but I know what you mean. This idea that not having some kind of, clash with them, I suppose, to find out how powerful just one tentacle is. It does seem like a bit of a miss. It's something that Star Trek Next Generation did with the Borg the first time. They had a clash with them, and then they were sent back to their own universe, saying, you're not ready to face a threat as horrible as the Borg. So for the next season or 2 seasons where you didn't see the Borg, you knew that this impending threat was coming, I suppose. So, So doing something like that with the Chalalalagul, as John seems to be calling them. I'm sure that wasn't what it was in the subtitles, but we'll see. But having that idea that this impending threat could come in season 3, meaning that season 2 they go out and they try and find some idea of who they are. But the story is closed quite significantly at the end of this show, that I really don't know what is going to happen in season 2. I don't know why this team of people are together, other than they get on really well with each other. By the end of this episode, there doesn't seem to be much impetus as to what they're going to do in season 2. But if they'd done that moment, as you say, John, that moment where they had to have a battle against the attacking invaders or part of them, and go, oh no, this is really tough. We need to get more reinforcements in season 2, that would make more sense.
They're going to be the A-team of the galaxy. If your planet's in trouble and no one else can help, call the A-team or the P-team.
It will be the P-team.
It's Picard.
So, because I know we have some other bits to discuss, but for me, this is where I think they should have done, which is Next Generation always had this amazing opening monologue to boldly go. It was Patrick Stewart saying, like, the USS Enterprise, blah, 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 boldly go where no man has gone before.
And you thought Michael Chabon would piss off Star Trek fans.
Yes.
Wow.
Here's me.
Over 500 episodes of TV where they had an intro with that wording, and you've gone, yeah, blah, 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 travel, something about space.
That's as bad as my pronunciation of Romulan. I wish they'd called Sheb Guneb Frank or something like that.
Oh no, it's the great Frank. Anyway, it would have been good to end on that, which would have been a kind of monologue from Picard, which is we go out into the great unknown to find these chalalabongs. Because that's the problem. Like, if they had set it up, which is we are going out into the great unknown to boldly go where no man or synthetic has gone before to find these, they could have set it up. But the problem is, right now, they probably are building it for season 2 or to be discussed. But at the moment, it just looks like a massive dropped thread. And it just looks like a massive piece of kind of storyline where they've been building to the destroyers, which is actually, hey, you thought the synthetics here were the destroyers? No, the destroyers are these guys, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no. And that's just, it just felt like that for me. So I'm hoping I'm wrong. And I'm assuming I'm wrong because people who are paid more than us and who are fantastic writers are looking after this right now. And I trust. It just feels like that dropped thread.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the concept, as we talked about in point number 1, the idea that Soji had a choice to make. Soji made the right choice. They're pushed back into their own galaxy, and that could be the end of the story for me, because that's the decision that she made, is to now go out into the world and work with humans and work with other organics, and working together makes us a better collective, effectively. That's the whole concept. So by them, it doesn't feel like a drop thread. It feels like they ended it in a satisfying Star Trek way to me. That's kind of where I'm seeing it. But if they'd wanted to set up a big bad, that was the way to do it. So, but we'll see, and we'll see where they'll go in the next season. Hopefully we'll have some information about that in the future, before we get back to season 2 of Picard. Chris, that was your Omega Directive. John, what's your media moment from the episode?
My medium moment is Riker joining the fight as acting captain aboard the USS Zhang He.
Look at you.
Yes. I love the fact he faced down the Romulan warbirds, especially where he says, is that General or Commodore O, I'll blast your traitorous ass. I just thought it was really nice. I liked the fact that he showed up. We knew that he was still in the reserves. And I just thought it was that nice little interchange between him and Picard as well, where he says, just because I didn't try and talk you out of it didn't mean I was going to let you go it alone. What, I'm supposed to sit around in the woods cooking pizza while you had all the fun? It's just this camaraderie between these two. It's just something special from the Next Generation. And of course, it elevates it even more knowing that these two get on in real life. And because you can sense that adds to it. It's like with Patrick Stewart, in the X-Men movies with Magneto and with Ian McKellen, because they're good friends and the characters then, it does add something. It's kind of interesting, I think, seeing it. And so I really like this moment with Riker coming to the aid of Picard from his transmission. And just, that nice moment between, the two of them, I thought was really good. I also thought that, Starfleet has gotten much more butch in its ships. That is for sure. Wow.
They got thick. They got chunky.
They really did. I mean, when he says, this is the toughest, fastest, and most powerful ship Starfleet has ever brought into service, I'm there going, damn right. It looked a mean looking ship. That wasn't a look that suggested exploration. That suggested a look of war. It was really interesting. But I loved them because I think I've always had a problem with the design of the Starfleet vessels.
Wow.
With the little matchsticky things where the engine is held onto.
The nacelles.
Yeah, because it's just like, blasters to that. It's the weak link. It's like we're watching Star Wars Rebels with our current confinement, and AT-ATs have problems enough with being able to get sort of tripped up. But on Star Wars Rebels, their neck is a weak point as well. So, I mean, it's a dreadful military machine. And I was just there like going, these look like something you would put out into space. I love them. They look mean looking.
They look like a beefy
proper
Voyager.
Dirty. Yeah, they did. They look like they've gone to the gym and bench pressed, I don't know, about 1 billion kilograms just to really beef up their fleet.
Nice. A nice little behind the scenes touch, as well for Riker's ship. The bridge, is a redressed version of the, Star Trek Discovery bridge. So,
nice.
Yeah, it was great. I loved, the look of these ships. I loved Riker on board, coming to help Picard. I'm glad they did that, actually. It was a nice little endpoint for these two characters.
Absolutely. I love the mirroring as well with Captain Riker acting, talking to Admiral Picard, retired. I love that they both have the little parentheses after their names, because they're not really Starfleet, but they kind of have the power of Starfleet, like that touch. But great to see Captain Will Riker, because we haven't really seen him as a captain before. There's only been a few episodes where he was acting captain, taking over when Picard wasn't on board. I suppose most famously for me, the one that pops into my mind, of course, is when Picard became Borg. When Picard was Locutus of Borg, then acting Captain Riker took over the ship completely. So seeing him here with his own ship and his own command in Zheng He was very cool just for those moments. And you see the kind of captain he'd be. He absolutely was supposed to be the replacement for Kirk when the show came out in the middle 80s, this kind of fighting guy. So seeing him as captain, and that's exactly what he is. I'll escort your ass out of the solar system kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's the kind of Captain Riker we could have gotten at some point.
Yeah, I did think when he left and said, right, I'll leave this in your capable hands, Picard. I was kind of there thinking, is Picard going to say, well, could you just leave me a few of those butch ships for me, please? Like, just to help kind of deal with the situation. Yeah. Dr. Jerati first spots all the Warbird warp signatures coming through. There is a great moment where Picard, I must say, I giggled about this quite a bit. He goes, it wouldn't happen to be Starfleet, would it? Yeah. As though, oh, please let it be Starfleet. But when they did arrive, it was amazing.
That's cool.
And as I say, what a great image that is of the Warbirds and of the Starfleet ships, there face to face. I really like the bit as well where Soji looks up into the sky and you see the Warbirds up in the very upper or lower orbit, I suppose, so that you could see them in space.
That was really cool, wasn't it?
It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
That's a little touch that I just went, that is exactly how it would look. And I was like, they didn't need to do that. It was an amazing choice. And that's it was a shot that didn't add anything additional to the story or moving forward. It just looked amazing. But actually, by adding it, it just made it so much more realistic.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, really liked it. Great to see Riker back in this episode as well. We kind of knew he was coming back. He wouldn't have dropped that line to Picard that he was still in the reserves if he wasn't going to come back either at the end of the season or sometime next season. I'm glad it was here for the big battle moment, I suppose.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you. I loved seeing Riker and kind of having him there. But Derek, you have yet to give us your media moment.
Yes, I have to take 7 of 9 versus Narissa on the Borg cube. I absolutely loved the scene where 7 tracks down Narissa, who seems to actually have stayed on board the Borg cube. I think when we watched the episode a couple of weeks ago, we thought that she'd escaped with the rest of the Romulans and were chasing La Serena to the synth homeworld, but actually she seems to have stayed on board and hidden out aboard the Borg ship. We see her being visited at the start of the episode by Narek, but this moment where she's about to blow La Serena out of the sky, yet we have 7 arriving to take revenge for Hugh, just felt so satisfying. Really did. I've loved the role that Peyton List has played throughout this season. She's been a really good villain, and having a proper one-on-one battle with one of my favorite characters from Star Trek. You know, 7 has been such a great character in the series so far, but having the battle between the two of them is a great fight in itself.
Yeah, definitely.
The throwing each other back and forth over the console while it's counting down the moment to having Serena in its sights to blow it out of the sky. I just thought was a really cool moment, and then getting the kick to the midriff, going, "This is what I've waited for," and kicking her straight into the depths of the Borg ship as she screams to her death. I thought was just such a great, again, satisfying beat.
Saying, "This is for Huey."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is for you. Damn it, John.
No, great. It was a great fight. Part of me for a second wondered, it's like, oh, will she ever return from that? No, no.
Well, the Emperor did.
That's exactly.
Different franchise, and one of the reasons why Star Trek fans hate Star Wars. Remember, they're two different universes, and they don't do those types of things usually. But if you don't see a body and you don't have a funeral,
that was my bit. We didn't see a body. Like, also someone is missing. At the very end of this episode, could that person go find her and help her if she's like mangled body type level? Like,
oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's totally true. But it was definitely a satisfying moment, and I couldn't imagine her coming back from that. I will absolutely give props again, though, for Peyton List this season. I think she's been really good.
Definitely.
Creepy in moments. I found out recently, and I think it might have been Brian Malash's podcast where they were talking about this, or it might have been on Fantastic Geeks podcast, but they were talking about the fact that originally when conceived, Narek and Narissa were supposed to be lovers, not brother and sister, and that it seems that some elements of their lines and dialogue and how they interact with each other were still kind of left in the scripts as it went on, which is why they have that really creepy brother and sister relationship.
Yeah.
Because some of the ways that they kind of are a bit playful with each other could have been that they were lovers in the past. But it kind of stayed in the script. So I think it works really well for Narissa anyway, regardless of whether they were, lovers or brother and sister. She still plays the creep factor with Narek throughout the season and with many other characters in the show. So, but totally deserved after killing Hugh, a character that was really good in this show and someone that we thought was going to join La Serena and be a major member of cast. After killing him, she deserved everything she got here.
I think that's why when she asked to throw her laser down into the void where she eventually falls, I thought it was great that they that little touch of 7 of 9 saying, "and the rest," and taking those little blades that she had used to kill Hugh, off her. I thought that was a nice little touch. And I think, I'm definitely with you. I think she's played this role of Narissa really well because she has been that great ice cold Romulan, secretive, highfalutin a bit, sort of definitely looking down her nose at everyone. And yet she's had a really interesting, complex relationship with her brother, where she's almost been treating him like a foot soldier, but yet there is this brother-sister relationship, which is a little creepy. And as well with her auntie, with Rhonda, I thought that was a really sort of just different moment. And, I think so many times we've talked about layered bad guys and how you achieve them. And I think this is one of those bad guys. She is a classic villain, but they've done some really nice nuances with the character, which have been played just to a T by Peyton List.
Absolutely, yeah. And as I say, love that she's gotten this role after doing the final season of Gotham. So she deserved more than she got on that show. Didn't have very much to do, unfortunately, in those last 2 seasons, but we did like her when she appeared on there. I'm going to bring in another bit of another point that I was going to use as my Make It So number 1, because it directly ties in here. The kind of after effects of what happens with Seven is something that they explore in this show that they may not have done in other shows. So we have her talking to Rios, where she's talking about what she regrets. And she says to him, I regret the fact that I promised I wouldn't kill anyone just because the world would be better without them in it. And that's what she's talking about when she says that she's killed Narissa. She killed her with a flare of anger, effectively, and that's not something that she wants to live by, and not a code she wants to live by anymore. So I like that there's that moment of the after effects of what happens to her as well in this show. Very good.
Definitely. But speaking of your small moments, I think it's time we move on.
Make it so, number 1.
Make it so, number 1. John, what's your small moment for the episode?
It is, dare I say it, the many, many smiley faces of Dr. Agnes Jerati. The moment where she is utilizing that magical mystery spanner, and she says, you use it like this, and all the faces pop up. I thought that was really good fun. It's just the expression on Jerati's face multiplied a million times. This sort of the big teeth, the happy face, the bright eyes. So it was really, really good. I think I was just so kind of emotional a bit, really, across all of this episode with all the different things happening. It was a real kind of heart tugger, and this I just kind of liked. It's the same way as liking just the throwaway comment again from Picard, but this time to Jerati about that wouldn't be Starfleet, would it? It was kind of small, but it was fun, and I don't know, I like this kind of kooky relationship that the two of them have got, and I just like this where they all popped up. And then they replicated it for La Serena in order to bamboozle the sensors aboard the Warbirds.
Yeah. I'm guessing from Chris's reaction that he probably has a similar feeling about the tool that's used, let's say. I think the scene was very funny. I'll definitely give you that. The moment when we had the faces around La Serena from Jerati, funny moment.
Yes.
Worked well.
Yes.
Magical implements that you just have to wish it into existence, and don't worry, everything will be solved by this little tool that's been developed by the Synths. That just struck me as very odd.
That was a Gruber and a half. Just
like Harry Potter's arrived, has he?
Well, that's why I called it the magical mystery spanner. Yeah, for sure.
I have 2 bits on this. One, so Jerati's a killer who is joining the group at the end of this, and they're still not going to Deep Space 12. They're still not going. They're not going there to put her in jail. She's basically gotten away with murder at this point, by the way, people. Just leaving that aside, I understood how the spanner could work to get the ship up and running, because you see the little arms go out, and it looked like nanites and stuff like that. That I can understand. So basically, that's how they built the tower. It was little nanites flying everywhere. It was nanotechnology. I can get behind that.
Okay.
The tool that you just wish, and then all of a sudden, all of these other mirror ones just fly up, where there's no nanites. And I'm just like, so how, what? Okay.
It was projections though, wasn't it? Because they talk about the mirror, broken mirror or something. I think Picard talks about broken mirrors. You know how part of that camouflage technology is to have things covered in mirrors, so they reflect back the. So it was kind of that. I get what you mean. I'm totally with you. Although it's one of these things where we'll look back at it in 60 years' time and go, oh, we doubted that technology. A bit like sort of automatic doors or something from Star Trek back in the 60s.
Okay, so I get it. I totally get it. I'm not going to get hung up in this. There's a reason I'm not going to get hung up in it, and I'll tell you in 1 second. But the concept here, where we have Rios on the floor talking to Raffi, and he goes, I have no idea how to use this. There's no button to press. What do I do? And she goes, Believe in it. Use your imagination. And she is joking. Like, you can see with Raffi, she's going, this will blow his mind when he sees what happens here. You know, she seems to be kind of joking about it. But then it happens and he fixes the ship and he goes, I have no idea how that happened, because even he doesn't think it's nanobots. Even he doesn't think that he's done something. He thinks he's just willed something into existence. And then having Jerati do something similar, going, I need this to happen. If I touch this tool, the thing I want to happen will happen, right? That's completely out there. It feels like they could have used this for anything at all. Whatever the situation required, this tool could be able to be used. Right. The reason I don't have a problem with it is all it was used for was fixing a ship, right? And then to disguise Serana for a couple of seconds while it got out of a tricky situation. It wasn't the resolution to the entire series, which it could have been. That's the reason why I don't have a massive problem, because I can nitpick about it and I can laugh about it. But if they've kept this tool on board and season 2 is like, this is basically the sonic screwdriver from Doctor Who, where they just use it to solve every problem, then I'd have an issue with it.
But that's exactly it. It's still on the ship. It's still there. And to be honest, yeah, I hope they don't go down a sonic screwdriver route like in Doctor Who, because that is kind of beginning to mess with my mind quite a lot on Doctor Who.
That's taken 55 years to mess with your mind. That's not too bad.
No, because it went away.
He's 55?
It wasn't as...
John, you're 55?
But it is on the ship. It is on the ship. And, I mean, I kind of took it that this was the implement that, Bruce Maddox used with regards to his the work that he did on these new updated synths, and that's why maybe it's even out there for the likes of Raffi and for Rios and for Jerati. I suppose the main thing is the name is so long, and hence why it's the pub quiz question for this episode, that you're just kind of like going, okay, if you add 20 words to an implement that can do anything, then it maybe sounds plausible. But ultimately, you're right. It's not the thing that saves the day.
And that's the good thing. That is the main, because if it's not nanotechnology, that was the thing. The mirrors, I don't get that, because if it's not nanotechnology, then literally they could have gone, I wish all of the warbirds were gone. Boom! Done. And I'm like,
maybe. I think it may have to be at least something within the local vicinity. You know, it might be, I want a bar in the section over there on the right hand side of the ship, and the bar gets built by using this tool. I guess it's something like that, because it is a tool of some sort. But I'm glad it wasn't the resolution to the series, at least. So I can kind of go, right, okay, it's a sci-fi show. There's a little sci-fi stuff that I really don't think was necessary, but that's it. Chris, I think we have one major moment of the show that we haven't talked about, and I think you've put it into this point here, but only because you didn't have space in your other points before. What's your number one moment?
So my number one moment, which is actually my number 3 moment, but anyway, is the Data's death eulogy. So Data is no more. Data has been allowed to die in his quantum state is being released. John talked about the emotion part of this, these episodes, and potentially welling up. I didn't until this part. Until we see, and you get these scenes where you have Data essentially preparing to die. Like him shuffling and fixing the room in his quantum room, his quantum
massive complex quantum simulation.
Yes, his quantum simulation, where he's essentially preparing to die, and then he ages and dies, and at the same time we have Picard giving this eulogy of life, death, choice. What it means to be alive, and what it means to be a synthetic who chooses to die, because that is the ultimate proof of life, because you're finite. So, and that for me was just like that was some of the best writing in this series, because it was just really so good. Well done. And it was it kind of encapsulated a lot of what was throughout this season in terms of what it means to be a synthetic if you can live forever. Like, if you are not human, what is life? What are all those ideas and machinations pulled together into this essentially beautiful goodbye for his friend who he never got to say goodbye to. And that was the bit I was like, oh.
Yeah, definitely. Brent Spiner and Patrick Stewart here. They're just so good. This was the second time I welled up. I can't believe you've put it as your minor moments, Chris. But I just thought it was, as you say, Chris, such a great musing on life and death, and also that closure from Insurrection as well. I loved it where Patrick Stewart says, "You can't remember your death, and I can't forget it." You know, going right back to the first episode of this season. I thought it was really nice. And again, I spoke about the butterfly motif. I really love that, as you were saying, Chris, that mortality gives meaning to life, and a butterfly that lives forever is really not a butterfly at all, because that's it. Their life cycle is what weeks, and mayflies are a day, this kind of thing. You know, these cycles of life is what give them meaning. And because it makes, the memories precious, because they actually can't endure with you, but they potentially endure with other people. This was just, this was so good. And I think, for me, the bit I absolutely loved, because it is so Data, is knowing that you love me forms a small but significant part of my memory. I hope that brings you some comfort. Fantastic. And I loved Patrick Stewart response to it, where he's like dead excited, because it's such a sciencey thing. It's like, the risk is this with plus or minus such and such probability, but he goes, yes, it does. He says it with yes, this is great. After they have basically expressed that they loved one another. So I thought this was really, really good. Something special, for sure.
Definitely. Really good send-off for the character of Data in the show. And, we have Brent Spiner back in the show as Dr. Sung, so we may see him in the future. So we haven't lost Brent Spiner from the Star Trek universe. And it's a nice send-off, with the action movie send-off that Data got at the end of Insurrection, feels like something that the family of Star Trek didn't get the ability to say goodbye to the character. So a nice moment here between Picard and Data in that final ending, I suppose.
Definitely.
Really good. It's a really well acted moment for all of them. The music playing at the end again being the same music that we've heard many times connected with Data as he passes away. And Chris, to your point as well, as he fades, and we have Picard holding his hand as he goes into death, and Picard's wearing his Starfleet uniform as well. I thought that was such a beautifully done CGI moment as it kind of fades into the background and then fades to the kind of space scene of the.
That was superb. Yeah, definitely.
Really cool. Really, really cool.
But Derek, what's your last and final number 1 point?
The point I'd chosen from my last moment was actually just the Seven and Rios discussion, but the other stuff that's in there, you also mentioned, John, as well earlier on, but Elnor completely breaking down in the arms of Raffi. That was heartbreaking as a moment. Thought it really worked well for the character, because we know of him feeling left behind by his father, the father figure that is Picard. We know how much he loved Picard, and being left behind for those many years and finally getting back to being with Picard and then losing him again is really heartbreaking for him. And it works really well for the character, because we know with Elnor and the absolute candor ideals of his sect, he will be free flowing with his emotions, unlike anybody else that we've met before. He's completely free flowing with those emotions. And it felt so heartbreaking. And he takes Raffi kind of on that emotional break with him at the same time. I just thought as a scene, it worked really well, seeing all of the reactions to everybody to the loss of Picard and what it means to them.
One thing I do like is the potential for season 2, where we get this adopted son and adopted mother between Raffi and Elnor. Because we do know that she is cleaning her up her act, but her own son doesn't want her. And we do know Elnor is an orphan. So this could be, and with this piece at the end, I could see it being this, there's a potential for a great relationship there that we haven't seen explored.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Any notes? Anything else?
Isn't there something else you have to do?
One thing I wanted to note about the episode, just made me question, because we talked about it last time in episode 9 as to who the golem was supposed to be created for. We speculated whether it was Bruce Maddox possibly being brought back, and that's how they encouraged Jerati to get involved. We'd speculated maybe it was for Dr. Sung himself, and then it was given over to Picard. When Picard says to Sung, "I'm really sorry, this was intended for you," he does this really strange motion on his face. He gets a strange look over his face as if it was never supposed to be for him at all. And I wondered, was it intended for Data, this mind that had already been mapped the same way that Picard's mind is mapped, almost? Were they intending to bring him back using the golem? Because it just feels like, I don't know, maybe it was just in the moment, but it feels like Dr. Sung was surprised by the idea that Picard thought it was for him. I
took that facial reaction as, well, I'm about to die, so, well, thanks. Because from my understanding, it was for Data's brother, Sung. It was for him, because the way that it's talked about in the previous episode and this one briefly is that he was dying or something. The way that when we first introduced to the golems, he's working on it because he's running out of time. It's because he was getting old or something.
Okay.
It was for him to understand. Now, that being said, he needed Jerati's help with the mapping and on that piece of it. So, and he built the bodies. So there's nothing to say that now Picard has gotten the secondary body or this body. Can they not just build another golem?
See, I think the golem part of it was constructed between him and Bruce Maddox. So without Jerati being there to replace Maddox's work.
Yeah.
I don't think Sung could do it on his own. They only created one, and I think it was because it was leftover work from what they'd done together with Maddox, if that makes sense.
Maybe. Yeah.
But also Picard does say to Sung, my gain is your loss, around the table.
Yeah.
So I hadn't really thought that it could have been Data going in there. It felt like Data's memories were feeding or were kind of the substrate being used for the likes of Soji and so on, hence why she kept remembering it. So that if you put him into a golem, then maybe he loses that. I don't know. But yeah, it could have been as well. It's someone we hadn't really thought of. Or whether, in being able to go into that massive complex quantum simulation, they were able to ask him and he doesn't want to go into the golem.
Yeah.
He doesn't want that new life.
Yeah. Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. I wondered, was there just another candidate for the golem? That was all.
Yeah. So one for me, and actually, I believe it was Derek or John wrote this down, but I'm going to steal it for one. The disappearance of Narek. I briefly brought it up with the death when you brought up the death of Narissa. He straight up disappears.
Yeah,
which is it's another one of these loose threads that I'm hoping is because he'll be brought back in Harry Treadway as the actor will be in season 2.
Yeah.
Because
I hope so.
I could see a good story between him and Soji on the ship and the will they won't. They love each other. They hate each other. That kind of, I could see that as a good storyline. Especially after season 1 of what's happened in season 2.
Yeah.
But they should have kind of shown him slinking off or something, because he was there and then he just straight up, it's just one of these dropped threads that they just didn't completely touch.
Yeah, there was just the 2 security synths who had him held to the ground. He called out for Soji and then they pick him up. And that's the last time you see him. The camera just disappears from him and never comes back to Narek. It really it felt odd. I was trying to trace it through the second time I watched the episode of what the actual plan was. You know, remember, he was released from prison by Sutra. She killed another synth. She released him, sent him off on some kind of mission to the Borg ship. And then he comes back with all the rest of the team from La Serena and they're trying to blow up the communications tower. And I was trying to go, does it say it anywhere here? Because it feels like what Sutra's trying to do is show the synths, look, here's some more organics. You met them the other day. You thought they were all good and they're turning on us immediately and they're blowing up the communications tower. But it doesn't say it anywhere in the episode.
No, exactly.
And I'm trying to work out why Why did Sutra kill one of the synths and send Narek off to do this mission?
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's just not laid out in the episode.
It's kind of one of my points as well, is that Sutra just kind of fizzles out as well. Given her role in part 1, all of a sudden you only really see her here outlining what they're about to do, and then gets EMP'd by Dr. Soong. And again, just fizzles out. So it seemed a little strange. I mean, Soong does say, you know, I've taught you better than that, in that it was the death actually of Saga that was the motivation for the other synths.
Yeah, it was the catalyst.
But then, as you say, why send Narek out? What's the point here? And then when he comes back, it felt weird that she wasn't there.
Yeah.
She just fizzled out as well.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what is the plan for these in season 2. Like, I think if they can, I like our fellow Trekkies and Trekkers to come back to us and see when we start recording season 2. And if these are kind of drop threads, remind me, because this is one that I'm like, okay, if you take them into the next, so potentially it's Soji's sister, the Golden Sister, and Narek have run off together.
Right.
So they escape as the disgraced Romulan and the disgraced synth. That's potentially a good thing, but they would just need to show it. I think it was brushed so quick. And the only other thing I can think of is, because it doesn't seem like it, but maybe it was cut for time.
Well, basically we were talking about it last episode for episode 9 being part 1 and episode 10 being part 2, that we were going, why would you do that in a streaming service? Put the two of them together, especially because episode 9 was so bad that it could only have helped it being a 2-hour show with the ending coming here. Watching this episode, it feels like this episode should have been an hour and a half with the same start, the same middle and the same end, and just deal with some of the issues that are brought up in the episode quicker, because I'm just going to wrap up everything that I have as other points in this section. I'm going to put them all together and say how quickly it all resolves itself in those last moments at the end when everybody's on La Serena, where we have the kind of camera panning around and everybody's chatting with each other. You have Dr. Jerati kissing Rios, so their relationship's back on again. You have Raffi and 7 of 9 downstairs having a drink and holding hands. No real explanation as to whether that's a relationship or whether that's a friendship moment. Don't really know what's going on there. Then you have Picard coming upstairs. You have Elnor back on board. You have 7 as part of the crew. You have Soji back on board saying the synth ban has been lifted. Is this one day later after the synths have declared themselves under the protection of Starfleet? Have they suddenly lifted this ban that's been around for 14 years, which was the central catalyst of the show? That last couple of seconds at the end of the episode just goes by so fast, and so much information is dropped in there that has taken place, I suppose. So it's not things to explore in season 2. It's things that they needed to tie up to get us out of season 1, and they did them in very small lines and very small moments in this episode. And it just feel like it flew by really quickly. And you're going, am I supposed to have paid attention to that? Am I supposed to have noticed that from something that happened earlier on in the season? Well,
the Raffi and 7 one made me double take.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not go down the route, but I was like, did I miss have I forgotten a whole conversation where they had this big, they've previously been friends or romantically involved or XYZ, or literally, I actually skipped back a couple of scenes in case I missed that kind of title at the bottom, like where it goes 7 days later.
Right.
Like maybe I just, because I was watching it on a small screen.
They've literally only interacted once before, which was the before going off to the planet for that big mission. And you did get Raffi saying to her, "I really respect what you're doing out here. That's the kind of thing I would want to do." You saw the respect between the two. And there certainly was a moment where Raffi was telling you how much she really liked what 7 did, and she would do something very similar to what 7 does. It's a bugbear for me on TV shows when they do this kind of stuff. Make it plain, make it obvious. You just had Rios getting kissed by Dr. Jerati upstairs. If you want to say that the two of them are in a relationship, have the two of them kiss in this scene at the end of the episode. But having them linking hands the way they do, it just doesn't tell you whether they are in a relationship, whether they're really strong friends, whether this is a new respect gesture that takes place in 500 years. That's how people show respect for each other.
Yeah, after COVID-19.
Well done. That was quick.
Exactly. You only hold someone's hands at one moment, and that's the moment you tell them you respect them the most. Yep. Maybe that's it. But it doesn't tell you anything. And all it does is have people have arguments about the characters, basically. So I wish they'd been a bit clearer about what was going on in that scene.
Yeah.
But that was it. That was the points and Easter eggs and stuff that we noticed within the episode. One tiny little thing that did bother me about the episode was, how does everybody know Picard's catchphrases?
Damn it.
Like everybody is sitting around waiting for him to say engage. Even Elnor, who would have no idea, even if it was something that was on the curriculum in Starfleet that everybody saw the bridge of the Enterprise and saw, episodes that were created for their training in Starfleet. There are some characters there that shouldn't know this, but everybody seems to get really excited when he says engage. And we also have a moment where Dr. Jerati says to him, make it so. She would never have heard that phrase before. Why is she excited about saying make it so to him? So I was very well justified having a reaction like this to it, because the other day on Ready Room, the after show that Will Wheaton does, Patrick Stewart and the actress who plays Agnes Jerati, Alison Pill, were talking about that particular scene, and he said he didn't want it in the show, but she pushed so hard and begged with him so much to be the one to say it that he allowed her to do it, but he didn't want it in the show because he thought it was going to be too much fan service. There you go. So I'm on the side of Sir Patrick Stewart as well.
And it's a good side to have. But for me, it was really, do you remember that joke in Family Guy where it's like, oh, they said the name of the show in the show? It was kind of like that. I was just like, that makes no sense. Neither of those make sense. Like, it's not like Riker has made a joke out of it. Like, and then they're following on the joke. But no, because Soji's the only one who's met Riker. It was kind of like, unless there's like the life of times of Jean-Luc Picard, and he's known, like his, like in the, do you remember the documentary they were interviewed, they were filming at the very beginning? If they had have called it out and going, well, you're well known for saying X and Y during these things. You're a war hero. You're like your ambassador. You're blah, blah, blah. And you have an amazing catchphrase in blah and blah.
Yeah.
They had to call that. Then go, okay, well, he's known for that. It's become.
Now, they did call that out in the novel. They call out that, cadets hearing him say engage or hearing him say things on the bridge, it goes across well. I just probably, this particular crew of people all waiting in anticipation of him saying engage felt like, why is this happening?
Say the line. He's going to say the line. He's going to say the line.
Anyway, that closes out of episode 10 of Star Trek Picard. John, overall, what do you think of episode 10 of Picard after episode 9 was a little bit of a disappointment?
For me, I really like this episode. It's not perfect, and I think the notes unfortunately pull a lot of those points out, but they're kind of minor for me. I think I give this 4.5 Uber Synths out of 5.
Excellent.
For me, it was the absolute emotional core of Jean-Luc Picard with Data, Jean-Luc Picard with Raffi and Elnor effectively passing away. I think the absolute balls of bringing him back as a synth, I think really interesting, really tease it up. I love the emotional element of Riker and Jean-Luc having that moment on the bridges of their respective ships. And also just the big standoff between the two fleets. Yes, I would have liked to have known a bit more about the Shalamala dingadongs coming out of the wormhole or from Greece. And I would have certainly liked to have seen a bit more of an ending for Sutra and Narek. Or at least some hint of their ending or what is to come. And I think, talking about catchphrases, then, there's a little issues, but I give it a strong one. I definitely defend it, because, I think the emotional, highs of seeing this iconic character doing what he's doing was amazing.
Absolutely. I totally echo that. Chris, what do you think?
So I know we're going to do a more seasonal wrap up later, so I'll talk about my overall thoughts at that point. As a standalone episode, I'm with John. It's like, yep, we've going through the notes. We've talked about the good. We've talked about the bad. Was it better than 9? Yep. Was it better than some of the other episodes? No. It was satisfying, but at the same time, it wasn't in certain aspects, but it was emotional. But at the same time, it was hair-pullingly questioning.
Okay.
Kind of, so as a finale, it was good. Mm-hmm. So it kind of on that scale of good, bad, great, that kind of, like, if I was to put it, I'd have it as very good, but it wasn't a great. It wasn't like a gymnastics 8-point, like, you know, that triple flip, back flip where they land and everyone's like, oh, 9, 10. It wasn't a perfect landing.
Right.
But it was a good superhero landing, if that makes any, like, if that helps.
Superheroes have to come into everything, don't they? For me, I think it was a very satisfying ending to the show. I think that's the best I could have asked for the show. We were quite down after watching episode 9 and having to wait a week and going, oh gosh, we thought they couldn't mess up this show, because we loved most episodes right the way up to episode 9. We were going, oh no, I guess they can mess up the show if they go down this particular path and work the story this way, and that's how they're going to end the show. Oh no, we may have pinned our tail to the wrong donkey. But it turned out they did a really good job with episode 10, and episode 9 I'll just put down to, unfortunately, just a bad episode. It shouldn't have happened, because the series is 10 episodes and everything should be building to each other. That felt like they just forgot bits in episode 9, and they still have the same problem in episode 10, but it doesn't matter as much because the resolution for the series works well for the ongoing story that we heard from the first episode all the way through to the end. Picard has had his realization now. He knows who he is and knows where he wants to go in the future, and everybody else around him are really good characters now. So hopefully season 2 will be just as good as the overall season 1. That's where I'll be.
Yes, hopefully.
If you have any thoughts about Star Trek Picard, we'd love to hear from you. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. You can also send in your answers to the pub quiz question that John's been running throughout the show. Get your answers in before Wednesday, and hopefully we will have a winner on our next podcast. We do have a little bit of feedback for this episode. Our first piece of feedback comes in from Jim Carey. He says, I never gave it voice, but I knew the opening credit visuals were a graphic overture. From the start, I noted the fragments coming together to make Picard, and thought partway through, could they be revealing that at some point he was going to be a construct? As of last episode, everyone else seemed to know where this was going, and I had a different idea, that his salvation would come by way of the Imagine It Fixed tool. I stated that theory up to the point where he was sitting on the chair in the background when he was just after he was having his attack. Also, who did we not hear from this season? I've rewatched so much lately, my head is spinning, but was it Geordi and Beverly that we haven't heard from? Finally, did anyone else think the rendezvous with Data was going to be a very quick cameo by Q? Thanks so much for the feedback, Jim. Yeah, I know what you mean. When you get the Imagine It Fix tool stuck in the show, you're suddenly going, oh, they're going to fix the entire show with that. Stick the tool out. Imagine that Picard's not dead. I'm sure it can put him together again. So I'm glad they didn't do that.
Yeah, likewise. I would have been interesting to have the cameo by Q in that simulation with Data and Jean-Luc. That would have been really fascinating to see what they would have come up with there. And it's not one I'm personally against. So, yeah, I like that idea. And yeah, we didn't get much of Beverly. I think there was at least a bleak reference to Geordi around the attack on Mars and so on beforehand. Yeah. And of course, yeah, I like the graphic overture, idea as well. I think that's a really nice thing to have that connection from the very start in a way.
The only other big characters I could think of that we didn't hear from was Wesley Crusher. We haven't heard anything about what happened to him, but he did leave the show around season 5 or season 6, I think.
Yeah.
Worf, of course, that we haven't heard from. There is very, very good details given about where Worf is, where Geordi is, and where Beverly Crusher are. They're mentioned in the novel if you do want to know what's happening to them. Actually, there's only one scene with Beverly. You don't hear much about where she is in the universe, but there's stuff in there if you want to find out where they are. The only other character we haven't heard about is Guinan.
It's Guinan, and we know that she was invited for season 2 by Jean-Luc Picard personally, in the form of Patrick Stewart.
Hey, Sir Patrick
as
Stewart.
Potentially a synthetic.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I'd be interesting to see who will continue to come back now, or have they done the cameos for season 2?
Yeah.
That'd be, I'm interested. Yes, but thank you, Jim, for all that feedback. We also had some feedback from Donald Dennis, who said, I'm watching it now and trying not to read the other posts with spoilers. The whole mind meld thing from last episode could have been skipped, and the information transfer handled easily if they had hooked the Doctor up to the scanner the Captain used to upload his personality in the holomatrix for all of his emergency holograms.
There you go. That's the way you solve that. The stupid idea of having a synthetic being doing a mind meld with somebody could have been solved so easily. And they had the technology there on the planet as well. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Donald.
Yes, thank you.
Completely agree, Donald.
Donald finishes with RoboCard. By that he means Picard, but a robot Picard, I'm assuming, yes, or is like that RoboCop. Just RoboCop? He's gonna just suddenly twist his leg and pops a phaser. Be amazing. And then he finishes off by saying, "Why didn't they make another column and fill its databanks?" Yeah, we kind of briefly touched on that as a question of why, but I suppose we'll see. It's one of the amazing questions that will plague us, but what won't plague us is RoboCard.
Yeah, thanks, Donald. Loving RoboCard. Great idea. I wonder if he will. I know he isn't augmented, but I just wondered if, shoot lasers out of his eyes.
No.
It'd also be a nice little link to Locutus of Borg as well. And yeah, Jim, thanks again for the feedback.
Mm-hmm. One final piece of feedback from Dr. Bob Phillips before we close out feedback. Bob says, I did appreciate this release from dealing with the coronavirus threats in real life and being reminded about the key messages of Star Trek. We work together, we work with integrity, we love, and we teach by example. Thanks so much for that, Bob. I think that was really good to share with everybody. It's a really good sentiment that came to us at the end of this season of Star Trek Picard. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. We hope you stay subscribed to the podcast. And if you enjoy what you hear, why not share it with your friends? Because sharing the podcast is sharing the love. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. We will be back next week, as we mentioned, for our season 1 wrap-up of Star Trek Picard. And any feedback that you have, if you want to send it in to us, you're more than welcome to, and we'll discuss it on that episode. We'll also have the winner of our 10 Forward pub quiz, so make sure you join us for that episode. Finally, as we mentioned before, we will be doing Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, so get watching the first 3 seasons of that show before the 26th of April.
Yes, and in the COVID times, you've got no excuse. Catch up with us and listen to our dreadful podcasts.
Yeah, thank you so much, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. It's a pleasure speaking with you. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and engage.
Bye.
Bye. We're going ASMR. We're going to talk really slowly and low. Oh my God. You say the line. Say the line.
Engage.
Yeah. Woo, he said the line.
No. Make it.
Make it. At In Arcardia Ego Part 2. That's my Latin. Do you like it?
Yeah. I'm proud. You're doing your Latin teacher proud.
I never had a Latin teacher. I'm not that old.
Come on, you are.
She is a classic villain, but they've done some really nice nuances with the character, which have been played just so well by...
Peyton List?
That's so Peytonist. I was thinking of Peyton Manning. That's all I can think of.
Peyton Manning looks really different. that haircut that Peyton Manning got was just amazing. Yeah.
And he's got no back troubles anymore. I know he isn't augmented, but I just wondered if, shoot lasers out of his eyes.
No.
It'd also be a nice little nod to Lacutius of cardboard.